afternoon. It's almost like spring, summer today. Thank God. I hate that cold. How many of you are happy with the weather? Yay! Okay. Please. I would like to first make the announcements for CL 112 quickly. No drinking, eating, and no cell phones turned off, okay? That's always my first sentence. And it's so nice to have you all together here. If you sit close, we'll have a better time because there are goodies here for you. Your final exam is when? I announced it 2 times. Should I tell you again? Your final exam is May 12th. Keep that in your head and be ready for it. It's on a Monday. Your field trips must be in. The deadline is May 5th. Your 5 field trips. But don't wait till May 5th, please, because we have and got enough help to enter them in your record book. So if you can please hand them in as soon as you go on your trips. And I want to recommend you going to the exhibition of, I told you should go to add El Museo del Barrio, right? Add that to your list of field trips. And also the Metropolitan Museum has a magnificent exhibit. Would you mind listening to me and stop talking to each other? That's not college level, that's like kindergarten. Okay, the Met Museum has a Courbet exhibit that I think you should all go to. It's really magnificent. And now, I think that's all. I told you about and make notes of all the guest speakers because your 20 multiple choice questions and the answers will be based on what the guest speakers speak about on this stage, okay? Today we have a very, very special guest. Just as last week we had the jewelry world, the finest, and I want an inventive, people who are creative, because all of you are not going to get your jobs perhaps in the field of fashion design or marketing, and you might venture out and be inventive and creative and do something else. And today we have Miss Eva Jean-Bart Lorenzotti. She was raised, educated in Switzerland. She earned her BA degree from Barnard, and in 1991 she joined Lazar Frères as an investment analyst, imagine, in the banking business. But after 2 years, she positioned her future as an entrepreneur in luxury brands where there was a need for a direct consumer contact. She resides in New York with her husband and her 2 children, and what she did was she saw that the catalogs were all just the usual catalogs, and this is an old one. She has a current one here. I left mine at home. Vivre. Vivre has a collection of the most elegant fashion statement and everything, and jewelry and accessories, shoes, bags. It's a work of art too, the way it's put together. There's nothing like it, and she's had a tremendous success with it, and I can't talk about it. I want her to tell you, but the point I'm making is that here is this very, very talented, special person of exquisite taste who chose to leave the banking business, Lazar Frères, a wonderful company, to be more creative and inventive and express herself. And that's what I tried to bring to your attention, that you have to use your inner feeling, your heart, your creative spirit. We all have it, but sometimes we don't use it. So without another word, I want Miss Eva Jean-Bart Lorenzotti, my dear friend, to come here and take me away. Okay, sweetheart?
Alice.
Thank you. Mwah. Mwah.
So, thank you so much for having me
I
here.
love it.
It's always such an honor and a pleasure to have the chance to speak to what I would call peers, spirit, youth, everything I believe in. So before I start talking about myself or telling you anything, I want to tell you something that has stayed on my mind for the last few days. So I was just in Los Angeles. I actually just got back last night, and I was there for work. Luckily, I love what I do, so my work is my life, and it's very often a pleasure. But what makes it really pleasurable is when you discover unbelievable people with passion. So one of the things I was doing in Los Angeles is trying to find new talent, new artists, new designers, to uncover the possibilities. And I had lists and lists with me, and the first 2 days seemed rather bleak, until all of a sudden I was in a store and I stumbled upon this incredible, incredible dress. And so I turned around to the store person and I said, "Who is this dress by?" And they gave me the name of the designer, and I said, that was one of the designers that was on my list. So next thing you know, we contacted the designer, and a day later, we set up a meeting. So I had heard all these stories about this designer, and the story about this designer was that he was doing all of this outside of his, in the back room of his house. So we go for a meeting, and I don't understand, because all of a sudden I'm in this very, very formal, fancy building, with floors and floors and floors, and I said, this must not be the right designer. So we sit in, and his name is Juan Carlos, in this very formal conference room, and he says, well, my day job is I'm the head creative director for Saatchi & Saatchi Interactive. And about a year ago, all I do is build companies and figure out how they can scale, whether it's Nokia, whether it's Sprint, whether it's this company. But my real passion is craftsmanship, and I come from Colombia, and I decided I was going to start something that I love to do by hand and make these most exquisite clothes. So as I was meeting with this person, and I'm looking at his work and looking at his smile and looking at his day job, somebody in the meeting with us said, well, how do you do this? And he turned around and he said, when you love, you do. So I have to say that is one of the most inspiring things that I've heard in a long time, and I believe that it means so much that when you're passionate about things, when you love things, you will go beyond. You will be able to undo the most incredible challenges. And let me tell you one more story, because my way of giving is telling great stories about people. It's having people inspire me so that they could inspire you. Because in this world, what we want to do is we want to leave a trace, and a trace is something that can be remembered. So I want to tell you one more story, and then I'll get on to what I'm supposed to be talking to you about. But you'll see my style will be a little bit all over the place. Back in October of this year, I was in Rome for a conference. And during this conference, we were in a forum just like this, sitting on chairs. They had set up this very interesting way of giving conferences where it's a Japanese style, where they have 5 different people talking about their own subjects, but they only have 3 minutes to talk, maybe, which is what I should be doing. I'm going to take the speaker phone out, just one second. There, because I feel like I'm sticking to the speaker. So all sorts of people spoke for 3 minutes, so of course everybody's attention span was just on it. And at the end of the conference, this young man spoke. This young man was South African. He was an English maritime lawyer. He was 35 years old, and his story was that he had just swam 1 kilometer in the North Pole. Now, that's 18 minutes. The human body doesn't survive more than 50 seconds. So, of course, and why was he doing this? He was doing this because this was his way of bringing attention to global warming. Everybody has their own cause. So later on, I was completely smitten by this man because I couldn't understand how he can do something that can actually reverse the physical being. So I went up to him, and after sort of a few minutes of discussion with him, he looked at me and I said to him, but how did you do it? And he looked at me and he said, the power of the mind. Well, after that, I can tell you he's got 4 pages in the next issue of Vivre. So these stories are really stories I wanted to tell you because these are the incredible people that go beyond. They go beyond in the very simple things, whether they follow their passion in designing a dress. They go beyond on whether they believe enough in global warming that they can reverse what a physical body can do. And I think that the reason why I'm saying this is because whatever you choose to do, It can be anything that you choose to do. Do it with your own passion, do it with your own conviction, and do it with your own strength, and you will be successful. So when I start to tell you about Vivre, I'm going to start just a few minutes to tell you about how I started this whole thing. And I feel every day that I've just started this company. So today, it's been 10 years that I started, and I feel like today is yet a new challenge. But I left banking. When I went to banking, actually, I wanted to get the right job. And I thought the right job would be working in an investment bank in 1991 and being on Wall Street, because that was what was accepted. That was what would make my family proud and make me sort of have the proper achievement. After 2 years there, I really realized that I needed to build something, I needed to create something. I had no idea what I was building, I had no idea what I was creating, and I certainly had no idea what I was doing when I started this company. And often people say, you know, how did you do it? And I said, ignorance. Ignorance is the best fuel in the world, because you're fearless, right? You know, it's sort of like my son now, who's 8 years old, you know, he'll go and do so many things because he doesn't know that it can hurt him. So you don't think about the reasons why you don't do it. You always think about that one reason why you should do it. So I was fully ignorant, and I'm still currently very ignorant, and learning every day, which I believe in a lot, and sort of jumped off and kind of went to this company called Christophe and sort of said to them, well, you know, I don't understand why you don't have a catalog. I don't understand why you're not doing things more like Tiffany. So they hired me as a consultant. And next thing you know, a consultant that really didn't know what they were doing spent about a year trying to figure out a pseudo business plan, by which time I just found myself jumping in and creating my first catalog. No business plan, no financing, really not knowing what I was doing. So maybe the idea is the best way to start something is to start. There's always 100 reasons why not to do something, and maybe only one to do it. And sometimes you have to follow your heart, and you have to know that whatever it is, it's going to be very hard. So my philosophy, which I'm a big, big fan of, and I just want to talk to you about, is sort of the 4 P's to success: passion, people, perseverance, and patience. I always say I have 0 patience. And if you do all that, profits will come. I can't tell you that the most important thing in whatever it is that you do is passion. You know, passion is something that will allow you to climb every mountain, to surpass every day, to wake up the next day and do it again, and to feel the whole time like you know, you're actually loving what you're doing. When you love what you do, you have one chance of being the best at it. So I think that without that, it's very, very hard to be competitive today in a world that's very fast, in a world that's very moving, in a world that changes all the time, in a world where there's always somebody waking up with a better idea. That's okay, because you've got the passion. People. I can't begin to tell you how important people are. I have a few rules that I believe in enormously. Always return a phone call, always take a meeting, always be nice to everybody, because you never know how life goes in circles. The people who you meet today that you don't really understand why you're meeting them, how they fit in your life, where they're going to fit in a few years, may just open a door you didn't look at. Surround yourself all the time with people, because they can be a very big guide to your life. They can be a huge source of inspiration. And then all of a sudden, it's like a puzzle clicking together. And when it clicked, you don't know what happened. So I'm a big believer in people. Alone, it's a hard road. Perseverance, it's very hard. It's very hard, and part of the success is the challenges. Part of the success is the tripping. You know, I sort of say experience is the word for the mistakes we survive. That's why they call it experience. Every day you will find yourself in front of a situation where you have to persevere, where you have to climb that mountain even higher, where you have to go back and do something that you really fundamentally do not want to do. And all of a sudden, you'll find yourself past it. So you have to persevere, because that's what it's all about. It's what it's all about. It's swimming that extra mile that somebody else will give up on. And patience. It's not going to happen quickly. It's not going to happen when you want it to happen. It's not going to happen on your terms. You have to be patient. Patience is what allows everything that you've built come together, because it will take time for you to be able to establish something. And if you're patient enough, all of a sudden you'll turn around and you'll hit, I don't know if you've read that book, The Tipping Point, you know, where all of a sudden something catches on, all of a sudden somebody's understood, all of a sudden what you've done has worked. Because what you may do a year ago may not be relevant, but all of a sudden a year later, it's relevant. Look at the internet and what's happened in the internet. You know, 10 years ago, 7 years ago, 6 years ago, everybody was talking that it was going to be the next best thing. Suddenly, everybody went into the next best thing, tried their very best, and then gave up. And where are we today? Where we are today is in a place where the internet is part of our lives. The internet is extremely powerful. And those few cases that did stick around, let's look at Google, let's look at Yahoo, let's look at all these companies, let's look at Amazon, you know, are enormous companies with enormous potential. And everybody who jumped off now there's a whole new wave starting again. So sometimes sticking to something for a while is really what will make a big difference. All of that, if you manage to get all of that, then profits will come, then money will come, then you'll have an opportunity to, you know, be financially successful. But if it's the finances that are fueling you, then I recommend that maybe you try banking or brokering or something like that, because in what you have to create, you have to be able to create visions. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the luxury industry today and the business and the market. I mean, if you look at some of the numbers, you know, the annual budgets today are over, you know, $6.2 billion across many different channels in the industry. You know, the industry itself has completely changed. What used to be sort of mom and pop fashion businesses, small businesses have become big companies. They've consolidated, they've become big groups, they've become, you know, very, very big engines, most of them owned by extremely large companies. So what's happened as a result is the market has changed, it's opened up, it's become a very, very big business, not just for the brands, but more importantly for the consumers. So the consumers today have access to everything. The consumers today can, if they know what they want, can click onto a computer, can click onto the internet, can ask a friend, you can search anything by anywhere you want. So what was very much a business of individuality and smaller hand has now become, you know, a global machine. Now the question is, now you know that there is a global machine, now you know that there is this global platform, how do you penetrate it? How do you find the right way to be able to become a player in this global platform? How do the smaller brands that once were able to establish themselves, smaller designers, smaller creators, figure out within this big world of product how to be able to recreate something? You know, luxury products before were really something that was created for the few. You know, what they, you know, certain people could access it, certain people could find it, certain people you had to fly here to get it, you had to go to this store to do it. Now that has all kind of gone away. And luxury brands have grown so much that they've created a variety of product for what they call today the mass affluent. And in addition to all of this, you have the growing markets. And the markets are not just the US, not just Europe, Russia, Asia, South America. The entire world now is a booming industry and is a booming market, not just on the commerce side, but also on the manufacturing side, and primarily on the manufacturing side. So, you know, are we looking at globalization? I think we are looking at globalization. I think that thinking of the detail, but then having a global approach is very important to what will constitute the future of this industry and the future of this success. So when I look at the luxury market today, I have an opinion which is a little bit contradictory, and that opinion is I believe in back to the future. And what back to the future means is let's go back to what this industry was all about. Let's go back to why this was created: craftsmanship, quality, personality, individuality, know-how, storytelling. And why to the future? Because it has to be relevant to the way we live today. It has to mean something to what consumers want today. Consumers don't want what they wanted 20 years ago. They don't want to live that way. They don't want to shop that way. They don't want to be that way. But we've lost the reason why anything matters. We've lost that storytelling. We've lost that human hand. We've lost that differentiation because now it's big brands, big products, and it's fast, 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 so fast that even the designers themselves are getting lost in the shuffle. So what I propose is to think about it as back to the future, to think about it as individuality, to think back to the reason why a product exists, to think back to the reason why a designer created it, to think about the quality, to think about the craftsmanship, to be able to tell that story, and then to make it relevant to today. So that's sort of the view I have on the luxury market. In terms of the consumers, I think the consumers today have completely changed. Everybody can buy everything, everybody can trade up, everybody can taste everything, and everybody has the potential to access so many different things. Once you have this customer, which is much more alert, much more used to doing certain things, much more massified, because there's an industry allowing them to do it, especially in the US, you know, where everything could be bought on a credit card, everything could be placed in a certain way. The market today has really changed. So what are they talking about now? They're talking about the segmentation of the customer between the original luxury customer, the middle customer, and the mass affluent, and trying to actually get that whole grid of customer base. So we have much more of a democratic playing field, and we have people who are constantly trading up, and what they do want is they want to trade up. But at the same time that they want to trade up, they're also trading everywhere, which means that brand loyalty is hardly existent, that people will shop at Zara's at the same time as they will shop with Vuitton, that people will go to Costco at the same time as they will have dinner in a fine restaurant, that they will, you know, drive an SUV truck but will never go off-road, that they'll have an incredible kitchen but they'll never cook. So all of these different ideas are really part of, you know, consumer psyche today. So what they want and what they will follow is people with ideas and products which enchant them. And this is the new consumer. This is the new consumer that we've cultivated, because not only is this consumer making us move very quickly, but the industry is moving very quickly too. So the two coming together are creating a consumer that's always on the move and very, very changing. So the challenge is, how do you appeal to this consumer, and how do you appeal to the different facets of this consumer? Consumers rule. So a few years ago, everybody said, you know what, it's all about the brand. It's all about the power of the brand, which brand is correct, which brand is incorrect. I think today it's really the power of the consumer. And they want to be led, because there's just so much that they're lost. So I call it the Yodaism. You know, they want to follow somebody, whether it's Yoda, whether it's Oprah, whether it's an art consultant, whether it's an art director, whether it's a, you know, your personal trainer, whether it's your stylist, whether you're watching it on TV as a reality show of how to do your perfect wardrobe. There is just so much out there that people want to believe in something. They want to be advised. They want to cut through the clutter. They want to understand, you know, what they should be doing, because they're lost in translation. The cycles are moving so quickly that it's very, very hard for them to be able to follow, and I think that's what they're yearning for. So they're yearning for opinions, judgment, and most importantly, what they really want is individuality. So in this discussion of the new luxury market is everywhere. It's in the streets that we walk. It's on the magazines that we read. It's on the television that we see. It's on the internet. It's in magazines. It's everywhere that we are. You know, how do we begin to define a difference? So if I can tell you a little bit about Vivre and what Vivre does, and how I think that we're trying to take on this challenge. Vive initially was started as a catalog, and the idea behind the catalog was, why not create for the luxury brands an opportunity to communicate right into the homes of the luxury consumers in a different way. So that was the original idea. That's not at all what Vive is today. What Vive is today is the people, places, and things that inspire us now. It's an edited version of the stories about these artists. It's a selection of the products that we think are interesting for you to keep and collect. And it is a supporting platform for brands, artists, and artisans with a very distinct point of view. Completely believe that. It will not appeal to everybody. That comes right into your home. This is accompanied by a website which works with over 150 brands, and I would say probably 150 artisans from all over the world. And what it does is it takes their opinion. It looks at them as style makers. It allows them to say what inspired them, why they did it, what do they love, how do they love it. Create product which is unique, create product which is not for everybody, and more importantly, mix the high and low, which I'm a huge believer in. I don't believe that style comes with money. And I don't believe that luxury has anything to do with price. As on an earlier screen that we had, JP Morgan says, if you ever have to ask the price, you can't afford it. It's really quite irrelevant. Somebody with style will always have style. Style is a very personal thing. Style is an individual thing. Style is the way you write a note. Style is the way you wear your dress. Style is something that belongs to you. The other thing about style that you need to know is nobody's born with it. You may be born with sensitivities, you may be born with an appreciation, you may be born with a certain talent of it, but what you do is you cultivate your style like you cultivate your life. And I call it begging, borrowing, and stealing. Somebody who's stylish will have their eyes open, their nose smelling, their taste buds there, will be willing to take from everybody and make it their own. As Picasso once always said, and I love that saying, he used to say, good artists borrow, great artists steal. The difference is when somebody borrows, you know where it's coming from, right? Everything is always recreated in layers and then made your own. Nothing is ever new. So looking at the world, looking at the architecture, looking at the design, looking at all of these things is extremely important. And that's very much fundamental to Vive, but the most fundamental thing to Vive is the idea of packaging individuality. Having a tool which is there that creates your own individual, that makes the choices become yours, and when you have it, somebody will ask you the question, where did you get that? And you can answer, if you choose, Vive, or you could say, it's an artist that I found here, there, whatever you choose. And so it's the idea of bringing individuality, luxury, style, artisanry, accessible. So that's what we do at Vive. In the years of challenges and in the years of differences, today we have a website that reaches millions and millions of people each day. We have a store that we opened in the Bahamas. You're probably going to say, why did she open the Bahamas? Well, my theory was, if it's successful, then I will learn, and if it's a failure, nobody will know it's in the Bahamas. And I mean it. When I really thought about it, it was an opportunity that came up. It was interesting, to think about Vive and to think, it makes sense for Vive to do something different. It makes sense for Vive to do something in a destination, and it makes sense for Vive to do something maybe in a resort destination. Having said that, I needed to try something I'd never done before. So the chances of success were just as much as the chances of failure. So that was literally the approach. So of course, having thought about a store for many, many years, that's the one that's right there, I wanted to create a store that was completely different and that could translate the vision of Vive. So the store has a 16-foot bookshelf with a ladder that goes right across it, and the bookshelf is not filled with books, but is filled with an enormous amount of products that you could almost see like if you had your own living room. There are cases that are in there that are all multi-merchandised and racks filling across the side. The store is very successful, and now the question becomes, which is always why every day is a new day, should Vive have more stores? I don't know the answer, but if you guys have ideas, I'd love to hear them. The other thing that we did is we created last year a new version of Vive, which is called Vive Voyager. And Vivre Voyager is distributed across many very high-end hotels across the country, and also going internationally this year. Now, the idea behind Vivre Voyager was, okay, so you have Vivre, which is this collection of product that is inspired by the people, places, and things that we love. What about putting in content about the people, places, and things that we love? Stories about the people, places, things that we love. So I was telling you before when I started about Gordon Lewis Pugh, who you should, by the way, look up because he's an amazing man. And so this gives me the opportunity not just to write about extraordinary products, but to write about extraordinary people. So we're talking about Gordon in the next issue of Vivre Voyager. But Vivre Voyager is very much, I think, a summary of what Vivre is. And I think the word Voyager is a very different word to travel. Voyager is a state of mind. We could be sitting here together having a voyage and having the most incredible voyage of our lives because we're open-minded, we're ready to go for challenge, we're ready to go for differences, we're ready to taste food we haven't tasted, we're ready to read books that we didn't think we'd read, we're ready to meet people that we didn't think we would necessarily meet, we're ready to have that conversation for that extra hour because we may actually learn something from it. We're happy to go to places we've never been before because the idea of discomfort is the idea of learning. We smile when we're pleasantly surprised by an encounter we never expected. And every day that we wake up, we feel blessed that today will be a day when we will learn something new. That is a Voyager. Travel is one element of it. And to me, that's what Vivre is all about. It's this experience. It's this experience of the adventure, the daily adventure of discovery. That makes what I do every single day incredibly exciting. So there is Vivre Voyager. So what are some of the new horizons? My guess, what I would say is the tipping point to everything is, conservative thinking leads to conservative results. We can all do what we think everybody else tells us we should do. And if that's the case, we will all be sitting here having the same conversation tomorrow, and the year after, and the day after. I think that you need to think out of the box. You need to think out of the box more than you've ever thought out of the box. You need to believe and be in your own convictions and understand why it is that you're making this difference. You need to talk to a lot of people in order for you to have your mind be challenged, but then you need to jump. You need to jump. And when you jump, you better start swimming. And it's okay. It's really okay, because as you swim, you'll see that the swim will become easier, that your muscles get stronger, that you'll be able to go further. And all of a sudden, one day, you'll find yourself in a place that will be yours. But I think the only approach to that is to think out of the box. Do you need experience? Yes, you need experience. You need experience to learn how to work hard. You need experience to be able to be surrounded by people who can teach you things. And you need experience to also know when you've had enough experience that it's time to go. The opportunities in building a business are endless. The challenges are great, but the reward when you have passion is quite extraordinary. And I know that I sort of jumped around here, talked to you about lots of different things, and maybe you're trying to think, what does this all mean? Well, is there an opportunity? And that's what I ask myself every day. Is there an opportunity for a new brand? Is there an opportunity for a brand that's not about clothes, that's not about hard goods, that's not about shelves, that's not about selling things, yet brings together the best in media and the best in transactions? Is there an opportunity for a brand that can package individuality? Is there an opportunity for the next global brand, and could that brand be Vivre? That's what excites me every day, and I may be crazy, but this craziness has brought me here, and I feel that if I get half of what my dreams are, or a third of what my dreams are, it'll be a pretty exciting road. And so go for it, believe in yourself, work hard, because nothing doesn't come without hard work. Have fun in what you do, and think out of the box. Thank you. Yeah. So So I'm completely open to questions. So shoot, any questions you want.
You mentioned that Vivre sometimes has an excess in product, or no? I don't know. Like, what would you do if you have too much of something? Do you have an exclusive sale, or do you give it away for tax deductions?
Well, what we do when we have excess inventory is we do two things. The first thing we do is that since the online business has begun to really be a strong part of our business, we have 2 online sales a year, one which is in January and one which is in July. And you can only get it online, but it's a pretty great sale, so you should definitely go. And because the internet business has been working so well, it's a fantastic way for us to liquidate. Since a very small portion of our collection is actually what I would call seasonal, and seasonal is really the few ready-to-wear, very much this year, no longer good that year, is really applicable. I'd like to say that we have less issue in the excess inventory because that's not the philosophy of Vivre. At Vivre, what we want is we want you to build a life of collecting. What you buy from Vivre this year, hopefully you'll like it even more next year. But for those cases, we do that. We also work with charities. We also do charity contributions. We work with Dress for Success. We work with Henry Street. We work with about 10 or 15 organizations where we do donations. And in addition to that, we also have friends and family, sales when that's necessary.
Questions? How do you locate merchandise? You go yourself?
We have a team of about 9 people in our merchandising department. It's broken up between, home, gifts, men, and the women's business. And what we do is we function very much like a magazine in that we actually set a mood at the beginning of every season for what we think is important, what we think is interesting, what trends we'd like to actually talk about, and we kind of stake our foot in the ground. And once we've done that, then we begin to sort of scour the world. But when I mean scour the world, of course we're at the big important shows, whether they're New York, Paris, Milan, LA, and then after that we go there. So there's shows on the fashion side, there's shows on the home side for both. So we do those, but it hasn't been a big philosophy to do those shows, even though we do them. Then what we start doing is a lot of investigating and a lot of underground work, meeting people, talking to people, figuring out who's the new thing. And then now we're in a position where actually a lot of people come to us, and so that's the other part of the process. So it's a pretty long editing process, actually, for the products to be selected.
Yes. How did you go from the catalog for to starting Vivre? Like, how did you get the first catalog? How did you get the first person to let you put it in your store? How did you get the first people to give you the products to display?
I got hung up on a lot of times. So the first catalog, I had one partner, and they were Christophe. So Christophe and I were 50% partners. And what I basically did is I basically built a business model that would be self-funding. So since there were only 2 brands in the catalog, which was Christophe and actually one of the other brands that they own, which was Saint Louis Crystal, what I basically told them is, look, you've got to pay a marketing fee, and your product has to be on consignment, right? So the marketing fee covered the production of the book, and the product on consignment meant that I didn't have to, put out capital to buy the inventory. Now, that was a lucky stroke, and it was the first, sort of the first issue that allowed it, where sort of things, got very interesting. Was that I was lucky enough in 1997 to be hired by American Express. So I was hired by American Express in 1997 to effectively take their current catalogs, which they had, and convert them effectively to Laude Vivre type catalogs. So we were hired by them to use our catalogs for their purposes. And we had that relationship for 5 years. And that's why I say people are so important. And literally, it was a stroke of luck, because what happened is they had a consultant who was working on a project looking at their catalog business. And he had met me, and I had told him about this product, this idea. And he called me in. And next thing I know, they kind of helped us get our first break. And then after that, we raised money, and things like that happened. We merged in 1999, bought the company back in 2000. I mean, all of that stuff happened. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a very good question, because one of the hardest things, actually, and probably one of the biggest differences of Vivre is that in the direct marketing industry, it's a very mass business, and not in a bad way. It's just that, catalogers in the US are issuing 30, 40, 50 million catalogs per year. And those are small, not necessarily big ones. So most of the databases and most of the lists that exist at a certain medium price, not because the higher customer doesn't exist, but because he hasn't really been marketed to. But basically, you have brokers. In the industry, you have brokers that broker each one of the lists of these different catalogers, because for many of the catalog companies, their list rentals are a huge part of their revenues, because they can turn their list hundreds and hundreds of times. So, we worked with a broker, and we put together what they call a circulation strategy, testing different lists and buying those lists. And that's how we first started. And our list, by the way, today is not on the market. You cannot purchase the Vivre list today. And that's been, very much a personal decision, so that, our customer can be respected by us. However, since it's not on the market, we choose to trade it with lists that we really want. So if somebody views us as a competitor, but they really want our list because we have a very, very high average transaction, our average transaction for the direct market is huge, it's $650 per transaction, then we will trade it to be able to get their names on an even trade. We used to come out twice a year, and each issue is completely different and completely new. Very much unlike traditional catalogs, we have basically 10% what we call repeat and 90% new. So each one of our catalogs is an entirely new issue that basically has about 1,000 SKUs. SKUs is stock keeping units per catalog. We are now on a 4 times a year schedule. So we have spring coming out now, we'll have summer coming out in a month and a half, then you'll have fall, and then you'll have holiday. Each issue is about 80 pages and holds about that much product.
Do you foresee problems in the luxury market with the state of our economy right now going forward?
I foresee a combination of things happening. I think that people will be much more conscious of their purchases and less fickle. So a lot of the fickleness that you've been having in the last few years, I think will go away. I think that the concern that I have, which is even greater than the current state of the economy, is the current state of the dollar versus the euro. And I think I have that concern for a variety of reasons, but one of the reasons being that, so much of the luxury brands today are still, European-based. And I can tell you, at looking at the pricing for the next few seasons, the prices have gotten unbelievable. And I think 2 things are going to happen. Number 1 is Europe, in terms of manufacturing, is going to have issues. And number 2, I think that a lot of that business will not be able to move, because there is a threshold. So a shoe that was averaging, last season, you're looking at shoes, in the higher end, anywhere between $500 and $900. You're now looking at $700 to $1,500. Is absolutely, beyond the realm of anything, even to that core customer. So I think you need to separate the core from the aspirational. I think the aspirational customer will be affected. I think that the core customer will not, but I think they will reduce their spend. But I think the concern is the dollar, and I think if the dollar continues to be this weak, it's going to be really a concern for the industry, because it's impossible to translate these prices. I said I said luxury is not about price. So I said I sort of quoted J.P. Morgan, said, when you have to ask the price, you can't afford it. So my belief is I talk about quality, I talk about ideas, I talk about people and simplicity. I'm going to ask you a question. 2 women walk in the room, right? One, you look at her, and they're both stunning, they're both extremely well dressed. One, you look at her, and from head to toe, you know what she's wearing. Right? You know, she's got the Fendi bag, the Gucci outfit, da-da-da. The other one is just as beautiful, just as elegant, but you don't know. So is there a price or is there not a price? Somebody sends you a beautiful card, a beautiful handwritten card. It's a nice, beautiful, thick card in a nice envelope. Is that a luxurious moment? You have so, it's a good question, and I'm going to answer 2 things for you. First of all, to me, luxury is a category, right? So I it's a category of business, of finer brands, finer things, people who aim to be in that certain category, versus a state of mind that we go after. So my customer is obviously an affluent customer. So let's start with that, right? Who has a certain amount of disposable income and who chooses to spend that disposable income. Having said that, if you look through the catalog and if you look through the way we present our stuff, first of all, we do never use the word luxury because it's a category versus a sentiment. Second of all, we're a strong believer in the idea of the mix. So being able to wear, $150 lucite bubble ring, which happens to be one of my favorite products, hand carved by Patricia von Muslin, which I can tell you the story, initialed and signed, the lucky ring, next to an Oscar de la Renta hand beaded coat that can be thousands of dollars. So it's that idea. Now the idea is that coat is not for everybody, but that ring could be within this market segment. Does that make sense?
Any more questions? Up there. I have a question. How does the mass, for the Forever 21, they steal certain designers' dresses and all that? How does that affect the luxury market?
Well, I think that first of all, they say that there's people should feel complimented when people start copying them. So, to some people that approach is the more people copy them, the more people will want the real thing or the non-real thing, but it'll get them exposure. But obviously, the market has gone so big that you can buy something at every single price. And that's why I believe that when I said it's important to think about going back to the future, and it's important to think about the craftsmanship, the identity, and all of these things that make a product unique and that make a product important enough to be sought after for the customer. So of course, I think fashion right now is in a very difficult position. It's a very, very difficult industry to be in because there's so many different producers of fashion at every single price point. The mass guys are doing an amazing job. I mean, Zara and H&M are incredible. They're not just their work, but their quality is good. They're moving through a lot of product. So it's a very, very difficult time. And that's one of the reasons why, I think fashion is something of the moment. And it's a tough economy for it because it's gone very, very big and so many things can be accessible. And that's why I think it's a time for brands to retrench and to really think about what creates their point of difference, or to grow even bigger, which is what they're doing in more markets at different price points. And that's why they're all creating second lines and third lines and, a top line, a bottom line, a side line, every possible line there is, because of that difficulty of, it's basically competition is fierce.
When you started your company, how did you get people to start believing in your ideas and working with you? Seeing your vision, how did that? Is it difficult?
It is. It's very difficult. I mean, it's I wasn't joking when I said I got hung up on so many different times. I mean, the amount of times I would call a luxury brand and they would say to me, which part of my no did you not understand the last 3 times is a true story. I mean, I would knock on doors and knock on doors and knock on doors. But I think what it is if it's the idea that if you can convert one person, that person can convert the other person. I really believe in that. And I really believe it comes down to persistence. I mean, it takes time and it takes execution. I mean, if you say you're going to do something, do it. And if you do it and you do it well, then you will get you get the opportunity to do it more and to convert more people.
I have a question. Do you, your market that your catalog is sent to, do you seek those people out, or do they subscribe in some way, or sign up, or how does that work?
Well, for many years, we seeked people out, which is, in our lingo, it's called acquisition, okay? So it's your acquisition list versus your current buyers. Today, we do very little of that, actually. And what we do is we do partnerships. And so most of the catalogs we actually send out, because they're very expensive catalogs, are to our current customers or people who've requested it or people who are subscribers. The rest of it, what we do is we partner. So we'll create a partnership, for example, with Crystal Cruise Line, and you'll go on the Crystal Cruise and you'll find a Vive edition. You'll go on the L'Avion plane and on the seat will be a Vive edition. We'll partner with American Express and we will be able to mail out 20,000 to their customer base. So we do a lot of much more focused marketing generated acquisition. And then in order to keep our business growing, we have about 15 to 17% of our entire circulation that will go to new acquisition.
I have more questions. I don't know if I understand how, do you work with the companies of the products that you represent? Do they pay you to represent them, or is it sponsored after?
No. I mean, we have a lot of marketing relationships, and then we have pure, what I would call product relationships, which mean that we decide what product goes in. They will do exclusive for us, they'll do special for us, or they'll do just regular ones for us. They do not pay us to be in it. Any more questions?
No more? That's it? Yes?
The price of the magazine, it's actually sent if you're a subscriber. If you're on the list, you get it for free. And if you want to subscribe to it, it's online, it's $10, but it'll be deducted from your first order.
Wonderful. I think if we have no more questions, we can come up and thank wonderful.
No, I want to thank you, and it's been fun.
Yeah, sure. I don't have enough for everybody, but we can get some more.
Are we going to get at the grade, the folders? Do you have any
The
more?
what?
The grade, the magazine.
No, but maybe you can share, or you can go online.
Online? Sorry.
Oh, sure.